Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So there is a lot of news. But before I get into that, I know that some of you may be wondering how my trip over the weekend was, where I traveled to Kalamazoo, Michigan, to go to the Michigan Libertarian Party State Convention. I was the banquet speaker. So basically that means like I spoke after supper. I was the grand finale of their convention. And the speech has been recorded. The video is being worked on right now as I speak. Might not be being worked on as you listen, but it is being worked on as I speak, where it's converting, and then I need to add in some graphics and a couple other things to it. But I will have that up, I believe, by the end of the day. Today, on Monday the 11th or 12th. I don't even know what the date is. All I know is it's Monday. So today's the 11th. So Monday, May 11th, 2015, I will have the video up by the end of the day. And because today is Monday, May the 11th, that means that tomorrow, Tuesday, May the 12th, is the official release date of Anarchy in New England, the newest book to be published by Free Press Publications. You still have a few hours to pre-order the book. The actual orders will begin accepted tomorrow. The books will ship after tomorrow. And the book will be available on Amazon.com. It will be available from your local bookstore. Might not be on the shelf at your local bookstore, but it will be available where you can go in, ask customer service, yes, I want to purchase Anarchy in New England by Joe Jarvis, and they will be able to order the book for you. Now, I can explain if somebody ask me the question for Ask Me Anything, because otherwise my horrible short-term memory, I might not remember. But I can explain why the book might not be available in the bookstores, because the way the bookstores work and the publishers and all sorts of other things, it's really like a big giant rental scheme that keeps the small publishers out. So somebody, please do me the favor, submit that question for Ask Me Anything. I'll explain it. So I had mentioned that I went to Kalamazoo and mentioned what it was for, but I didn't actually tell you anything about the trip. So on Friday morning, about 3:30 in the morning, I had a friend of mine take me to the Manchester airport for my 7 o'clock flight. And no, I did not give the TSA a hard time, partly because I needed to make sure that I got out to Michigan, and also because I didn't want them like messing with my luggage. And the reason I didn't want them messing with my luggage is because I took my portable studio with me, and I didn't want them trying to say like, oh, well, the cord could be used as a weapon. You could strangle somebody with it. We have to keep this. So I didn't give the TSA a hard time there or back. And on the way there, had flight delays, but I still wound up getting there on time. Did not miss any of my connecting flights. So that worked out good. I got a little bit of sleep on the flights there. On the way back, no problems at all. Kalamazoo's airport is extremely tiny. I was like the only person going through TSA when I went through. And they got confused by the recording equipment. They were like, there's something, we can't tell what it is. And I was like, it's either the mic stand or the mixer. And they're like, still can't tell what it is in the x-ray machine here. We need to go through your luggage. And so they opened it up, and they're like, oh, yeah, this is it. And I was like, yeah, that's the mic stand. And then the TSA lady was like, do you want me to put the stuff back in your bag? I was like, I would rather put it back in myself, please. That way, because I wanted to make sure that it was packed properly and everything fit and nothing got screwed up. So, that happened. Flights weren't delayed on the way back. And overall was a very pleasant trip. I live blogged the event. And I did that over at independentpoliticalreport.com. I'll post the link to the thread where I did all of the live blogging. That way, if you're curious what happened, you can read through. And basically, I was like a second secretary for the event because, I'm live blogging and the secretary is typing everything down, and I was pretty much typing what he did. Only he added the names of like who motioned, who seconded, and I had no clue who most of the people were. But I did know several people. There were several people there that I've been Facebook friends with for a long time. There was actually, and this is sort of an interesting side story, as I was getting on the flight in O'Hare to go to Kalamazoo, I'd sit down, and this voice from across the aisle says, "Are you Darryl?" Yes, I am. "And you are?" He said, "Michael Pickens." I was like, "I know that name." He said, "Yeah, we're Facebook friends." And he is the current chair of the Washington State Libertarian Party. He came out, he gave a speech. The speech that he gave was technically the keynote address, but it was early in the day before lunch. And he did a very good job. I forget exactly what the title of his speech was, but he was talking about, various things people can do for like political outreach, how you could, some of the ways to grow the party and be a successful candidate and other things along those lines. Mine was growing liberty, not specifically growing the Libertarian Party. And there's a different, I know a lot of people that are libertarians that think that, the Libertarian Party has a trademark on the ideas of liberty. And there are some people that think that, the Libertarian Party is just worthless, and that, if you really want to spread liberty, you have to run as a Republican and lose in their primaries because somehow that affects the outcome of the world. And I was giving things that you can do other than trying to get people into the Libertarian Party, or other than just necessarily running a quote-unquote successful political campaign. And the reason that I say quote-unquote successful is because different people have different definitions of what a successful political campaign is. I think a successful political campaign is one in which you use the campaign to educate people and you spread the ideas of liberty. Other people think that a successful political campaign is one in which you don't really explain where you stand on any of the issues. You just get elected, and that is success. And then after you're in for a couple of terms, then you can actually start, introducing bills and legislation to promote the ideas of liberty and further liberty. And I think that that is sort of being cowardice, and you're being dishonest. And the reason I say that people who hide their ideas are being dishonest is it's one of those, it's a lie by omission sort of things. To where if you ask me, did I do a certain thing, and if I did it, and I don't answer your question, and I just sort of do like a Mr. X sort of thing about, oh, well, what do you think about the weather? Like, I never answered your question. I didn't tell you the truth. I didn't lie explicitly, but it's a lie by omission. And if you hide your ideas, then you're lying by omission. I'll get into the news when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online, ftpradio.com.
Why do they hate us? Is libertarianism compatible with Islam? Davi Barker answers these questions and more in Voluntary Islam and Other Essays. He advances the voluntarist cause with analysis of the confluence of values between Islam and libertarianism, as well as contemporary movements from the Tea Party to the Arab Spring. Voluntary Islam by Davi Barker will be available on February 19th. Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for t-shirts, precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. There's an Amazon shopping iframe built into the website, or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. That's shop.fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So one of the big stories, and I'm not going to talk about it during the show, but I will, because I have not yet written my weekly commentary that generally comes out on Sunday. I will do that later today, and I will touch on the NSA spying, where a federal judge said that it is illegal. The judge did not go so far as to say that it was unconstitutional. And, you know, there's a slight difference between the two, to where one is the Constitution prohibits you from doing this, the other is statute says you can't. But in either case, I still contend that Edward Snowden is going to be the only person that ever gets charged with anything for the spying that was done. And yes, I realize that Thomas Drake was charged before Edward Snowden ever leaked things, and the stuff that Drake exposed was in violation of Section 215 of the Patriot Act, and that's what the judge said, like, you know, the spying that's happening, supposedly because of authorization of Section 215. Yeah, Section 215 doesn't give you authority to do that. Illegal. But I contend nobody is going to wind up being charged. It's just like with the CIA torture thing. The only person that's in jail for any of the CIA torture stuff is the guy that exposed the torture that was happening by the CIA. And just think about that for a second. The only person being punished is the one who exposed the wrongdoing. Now, that just seems totally backwards and asinine, in my opinion. And something else that is backwards and asinine is something involving the Justice Department. The story here comes from the Free Thought Project. Headline: Justice Department officials said it's not their job to notify prisoners that they might be incarcerated for something they now concede is not a crime. You heard that right. The U.S. Department of Justice says that it is not their job to notify prisoners that they might be incarcerated for something that was not a crime. The story out of Elizabethtown, North Carolina reads, there are over 60 people sitting in jail in North Carolina right now, despite the fact that they have been declared innocent in a court. This according to a recent investigation by USA Today. Some of the prisoners are totally unaware of the legal status of their, don't even know that they have been declared innocent, so many of them are not even fighting for their own freedom. The investigation found dozens of cases where men have been sent to jail for nonviolent gun possession offenses, yet it was not illegal for them to have a gun. All of the cases in question result from a legal misunderstanding that has allowed police and prosecutors to throw people in jail, exercising their right to bear arms. It is a federal crime for felons to possess firearms, and while all of the men arrested under these laws did have criminal records, they were not felons. This detail was specifically codified after the cases in question were decided, so as far as the court is concerned, the prisoners were still guilty of a crime. It is a federal crime for felons to possess firearms, and basically they, for some reason, have the same two sentences here again. They then report, USA Today reports, Justice Department officials said it was not their job to notify prisoners that they might be incarcerated for something they now concede is not a crime. And although they have agreed in court filings that the men are innocent, They said they must still comply with federal laws that put strict limits on when and how people can challenge their convictions in court. The courts are now afraid to overturn the rulings because then they would be setting a precedent for other inmates to challenge their own imprisonment. That's right. The U.S. criminal injustice system that has incarcerated these people and which has essentially said, yeah, they never should have been in jail in the first place because what they did wasn't illegal, is not going to overturn the rulings because they fear it would set a dangerous precedent that allows inmates to challenge their own imprisonment. How dare we allow people to challenge the convictions that they have? Ann Tompkins, the U.S. attorney in Charlotte, told reporters, quote, "We can't be outcome-driven. We've got to make sure we follow the law, and people should want us to do that. We are looking differently for ways within the confines of the law to recommend relief for defendants who are legally innocent." However, many legal experts are saying that the government has a responsibility to overturn these rulings and inform the prisoners of the status of their cases. Deborah Graves, an assistant federal public defender in Raleigh, said, "If someone is innocent, I would think this would change the government's reaction, and it's sad that it hasn't. I have trouble figuring out how you rationalize this. These are innocent people. That has no matter that has to matter at some point." And I think it does matter. But it doesn't really matter what I think because I'm not the guy in the black muumuu with the little bangy stick that gets to say you go to jail. I'm just a guy with a podcast and a website and a newspaper, and I'm running for political office, and every now and then people actually listen to me. But again, this has to matter. You have people that are in jail who did not actually violate any law or any statute or any regulation, but the bureaucrats and the people in the Justice Department say, well, sorry, they've got to stay there because it would be dangerous. It would set a bad precedent if we overturn these convictions that never should have happened in the first place. The story here from the Free Thought Project concludes, sadly, the rusty cogs of bureaucracy turn at such a rate that justice is but a pipe dream for most. The system would rather keep innocent people locked away than admit their mistake. And let me just briefly read something from the USA Today article where they go a little more in depth, and they actually talk about some of the individuals. One of them, Terrell McCullen, who did not commit a felony by carrying a shotgun and a rifle out of his ex-girlfriend's house. However, he is serving a federal prison sentence for it. And the fact that everyone, including the Justice Department, agrees that he is legally innocent might be enough to set him free. Now, this is interesting because the USA Today article says it might be enough to set him free, but the Free Thought Project article makes it sound as though that might is a very, very slim possibility. The USA Today investigation, based on court records and interviews with government officials and attorneys, found more than 60 men who went to prison for violating federal gun possession laws, even though the courts have since determined it was not a federal crime for them to do so. Many of them don't even know they're innocent. The legal issues underlying the situation are complicated and are unique to North Carolina. But the bottom line is that each of them went to prison for breaking a law that is not actually a law. They did nothing wrong, but some cop thought they did, some judge agreed, and now they're in jail. There's more news when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, including, are people too dumb to decide things on their own for themselves?
When her plush and comfy life suddenly and unexpectedly fell apart, Brooke and her dog Cloud set out to defy the odds. If this is a man's world, as they say, living on the streets is no place for a young woman. One day she awoke in the redwood forest and realized she had become a hobo. and would ultimately come to know exactly what it means to survive. How to Be a Hobo by Brooke Willett is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Opening a wallet is quick and easy, and for merchants, there are no transaction fees on the first $1 million worth of transactions. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month or any amount of Bitcoin per month, thanks to the recurring payment options provided by Coinbase. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's FANS.fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. According to scientists who have researched these things, I guess, because there's an article that says that they have, and actually this article is a little older than I suspected. I just came across the article today, but it's actually from 2012. Scientists say that people aren't smart enough for democracy to flourish. And many of you know my thoughts on democracy. And if you don't, I will tell you now in a very succinct manner that democracy, much like slavery, is a system that should not exist, should never have existed in the first place, and hopefully at some point in the future will not exist. The article here from Yahoo News reads, "The democratic process relies on the assumption that citizens, the majority of them at least," and that's inaccurate, it's actually a plurality, and I'll explain the difference in just a moment, but it relies, this again from Yahoo, the assumption is that the citizens can recognize the best political candidate or the best policy idea when they see it. But a growing body of research has revealed an unfortunate aspect of the human psyche that would seem to disprove this notion and imply instead that democratic elections produce mediocre leadership and policies. Now, why do I say that it is not a majority, but rather a plurality that actually makes a decision? That's because in most elections, you do not have a majority of the people that show up to cast a ballot. And even if you did have a majority of people that showed up to cast a ballot, there is still a very good chance that it would not actually be a majority of people making a decision one way or the other. For instance, the average voter turnout is somewhere around 50%. Generally, it's a little less. Every now and then, it's a little more. But that's 50% of registered voters, not 50% of the total population. So even if everyone that turned out voted the same way, you would still not have a majority of the people making a decision. You would have a plurality of the people, because a plurality means it's the largest number of a whole. So, for instance, when Jesse Ventura was elected governor of Minnesota in 1996 or 1998, I forget which year exactly, but it was late 90s when he was elected. He wound up getting elected with a plurality of the vote. He got, I think it was 38% of the vote, which is less than 50, but higher than what either of the other candidates received. There were three candidates. There might have actually been a fourth candidate on the ballot, but there were the Republican, the Democrat, and Jesse Ventura as the Reform Party candidate, he's the one that won. And he wound up getting a plurality of the vote. Largest number, but not over half. And that's what happens in elections, is the largest number, sometimes it's over half of those that show up. Sometimes it's not, especially when you have more than two choices. And I realize on ballot questions, for the most part, you don't have more than two choices. You have yes or no, agree or disagree. But with candidates, except in Oklahoma and a couple of other places, you have generally a Republican, a Democrat, and a write-in space. There are, I think, 5 states that have completely banned write-in votes, Oklahoma being one of those. Nevada has also banned write-in votes, but they have the option of none of the above candidates as one of the ballot listed options. So you always in Nevada have at least that other choice. Even if you've got a Republican or a Democrat running unopposed, you still have that other choice of none of these candidates. Although none of these candidates is not a binding option in Nevada, you still have the ability to vote for something other than one of the ballot listed candidates. So, there are a couple other places where you can't do a write-in, but those places you generally have a less restrictive ballot access requirement. So you might have a libertarian, you might have an independent candidate, you might have a Green Party or a Constitution Party or something else. So, for most elections, you have more than two choices. Even if that other choice is write-in or none of these, you generally have something other than the ballot, the major party ballot listed candidates that you can vote for. And there are a lot of times when no ballot listed candidate gets over 50%, but they still win. And again, that's the plurality. So democracy, and I actually am going to talk more about democracy than reading this actual article. Democracy, we're told, is majority rule. But it's plurality rule. It's a minority of people that rule, and they make decisions that affect the majority. There, a couple of years ago, was the mayoral election in San Antonio, Texas. I was living there at the time, and I think voter turnout was 7%. The incumbent mayor got 81% of the 7% that showed up, which means he got like 5% of the people in San Antonio to actually cast a ballot for him. But the media reported it as mayor wins the election in a landslide. Well, no, 5% of the people is not a landslide. That's a minority of people that are forcing someone on the majority of the people. That is democracy. And maybe it's a good thing that people, quote unquote, aren't smart enough for democracy. And the reason I say it might be a good thing is because then maybe democracy and elections go away and the coercive state goes away. But I don't think that you can necessarily say that that's going to happen, because there are all other kinds of government methods other than voting for people. But I find it strange, and of course I've not read the actual study from the researchers and the psychiatrist and the psychologist, but I find it strange that people are smart enough to make decisions about multiple things daily without any sort of outside interference. Where, people go to a grocery store, there are hundreds, if not thousands or tens of thousands of products. And people are able to decide which ones of those products they want to purchase. Now, would the psychologist say people are too dumb to shop for groceries? Because, there might be some people that they just go in and whatever has the sell tag, that's what they buy, whether they want it or not. Well, it's got a sell tag, so got to buy that. There might be some people that, psychiatrists would say are too dumb to shop. But I think that, this article, and I'll post it in the show notes, you can decide for yourselves what they're trying to come up with. But I think basically they're trying to come up with this thing of, well, you're too dumb to vote, so that's why we need to take care of you. You need the state because you're too dumb to decide for yourselves. And I disagree. I think people are smart enough to decide for themselves. Tune in again Wednesday. Ask Me Anything, AMAFPTradio.com.